Check one, two. Yeah, we're going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Hi. The president is working tonight, so I'll be running the meeting. First up, we have our winter sports athletes here, and Mr. Sullivan will be presenting their accomplishments.
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. Can you hear me? Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to recognize our outstanding student athletes that are sitting here behind us right now. Athens had a great winter season this year, and I'll quickly sum up what each of our teams accomplished. First, I'll talk about our unified bocce ball team. That was coached by Jess Zellers and Michelle Ledane. This was the second year that we had bocce ball in the NTL, and it was an awesome experience. Bocce ball, the game itself, is played with 4 players on each end. But Athens had enough participation that we actually switched teams after each game because we had so many players. So we had we had over 16 kids on the team that would play. So that was unusual as far as we had more participation than other schools, which is great. We participated in the NTL championships over at Mansfield, and we have Isaac Habde right here. One of our awesome athletes is here to represent the bocce ball team. And a little side note, Isaac also achieved 4 gold medals 2 months ago at the Special Olympics track and field meet at St. Francis University. So thank you, Isaac. The next sports that I would like to recognize are our boys and girls swim team, and that's coached by Coach Chantel Place and Coach Mark Keister. Here today we have Tegan Williams, Chris DeForest, and Ethan Denlinger, and they're all members of our swim team. This year at districts, our boys team finished in 3rd place, and our girls team finished in 4th. Tegan back there finished within 1 second of our school record in both the 100 and 200 meter freestyle, and I'm sure she'll achieve that next year. Krista Forrest finished 2nd place in the 50 meter freestyle with a time of 23.17 seconds. And our 400 free relay boys team of Chris, Ethan Hicks, and Ronell Ancom actually finished in 2nd place, and they were 1 spot away from qualifying for the state meet in Bucknell. So they did a great job, and we actually had 2 divers that competed at the district diving championships, and that was Trayvon Simpson and Carter Lewis. So that's a little bit about our boys and girls swim team. You guys can stand up right there. Our girls basketball team is represented here tonight by Cadence Mosick and Olivia Barlow. They're sitting right here. They had an excellent season also. They went 17-6 for the season. They were 2nd place in the large school NTL. They won their first showdown playoff game, so they beat Northeast Bradford, who was a very good team. And then they lost a tough game to Towanda in the showdown finals, and they lost a close game to Lewisburg in the district playoffs. But 17 wins for our girls basketball team, and thank you, Cadence and Olivia. I'm sorry, our girls basketball team is coached by Brian Miller and assisted by Dan Lane, Kevin Wheeler, Rachel Stevens, and Aaliyah and Nick Bavacqua. So we thank them all very much for doing a great job leading our girls basketball program. Our boys basketball team is right here, is represented by Coach Jim Lister, Tucker Brown, JJ Babcock, and Troy Pritchard. The team went 21-8 this year. The boys team is coached by Jim Lister, Cody White, John Babcock, Steve Satterley, Jim Friend, Lenny Penka, and Dave Bennett. And the boys team, they finished 2nd in the large school NTL. They beat a very good district champion Wyalusing team in the first round of the showdown playoffs, and then they beat Troy in the showdown finals in an overtime game at Sayre. So that was an outstanding game. They won their first 2 district games, made the district finals, and played a good game at Mansfield University, finishing district runner-up. And then they went to the Scranton CYC and beat Mid-Valley for Athens' first state playoff win in 60 years. So they had an unbelievable postseason run, and I'd like to congratulate our boys basketball team on a great season. The final team, 2 teams that I'll talk about tonight is our boys and girls wrestling teams. They are represented here tonight by Caden Setzer, Carter Rude, and Lily Galasso. They are all here tonight. The wrestling team is coached by Sean Bradley, Scott Setzer, Jeremiah Bailey, Dustin Bishop, and the girls team and boys team coached by Jay White and David White. All the coaching staff kind of works with the entire program, so they did a fantastic job. Girls had some phenomenal results. They were all over the state this year in their first year of competition. It really was a great thing. I got so many compliments, and I thank the board for their foresight to start this program, because girls wrestling is now an emerging sport in PIAA, and I think very shortly will be a full-on, just a sport like all the rest of the ones that we talk about here. The girls at the state tournament, they had some outstanding place winners. Haley Slosher finished second. Lacey Hinman finished second. Hannah Rathbun finished third. Raven McCarthy Gardner finished fourth. And Raven, actually, she would have been here tonight, but she's at an orchestra concert. So showing some of the diversity of our student athletes and how well-rounded they are. And also, I was going to say Raven is going to East Stroudsburg University to wrestle. So not only did they have a high school experience of wrestling, but it provided a college experience for her as well. And Lacey Hinman, a girl who goes to Troy High School, but was on our team through the co-op, is going to Elmira College to wrestle. So that's 2 different girls wrestlers that we have just in our very first year. Now on the boys side, we had 2 signing days yesterday where Caden Setzer is going to Kent State University and Gavin Bradley is going to Castleton. So both of them are also going to college to continue their athletic careers with wrestling, and both outstanding wrestlers. Caden would have been a state qualifier for sure without an injury in sectionals. We did have another state qualifier with Carter. He made it to Hershey, and Gavin Bradley, not only did he make it to Hershey, but he was state champion at 113 pounds. Gavin is an outstanding athlete. One that any athletic director is happy to have on his side for sure. Tremendous year, but not only did he win the state championship in Hershey, he won the sportsmanship award at the District 4 meet. They only give out 1 for all the wrestlers in the whole district, and Gavin won that. So it shows a little bit, not only is he a tremendous competitor, but he's a great sportsman as well. And all these kids on the rest of boys and girls team are also, most importantly, great students. So we have 25 members of the boys and girls wrestling team total. And out of those 25, 11 of them were on the all-state academic team. So they did tremendous, not only on the mat, but in school. So they're a great representation of Athens. That pretty much wraps it up. Before I go, I want to thank Katie Coe, the athletic secretary. She does a phenomenal job. Linda Harkness and Jody Straight. Dustin Chambers is here. Everyone with Chambers Busing, with transportation, and Phil Williams and all his custodial staff for putting everything together so these kids can have a wonderful experience. And thank you guys for the time tonight.
On behalf of the board, we'd like to say thank you to all the student athletes. You represented Athens well this year, as well as the coaching staff. Okay, we're moving on to approval of the minutes from our meeting on April 19th. Do I have a motion to, what do I need? Oh, approve it by consent. Any questions, concerns, changes? Okay, approval by consent. We need to pause for a few minutes for an executive session for personnel and contracts.
This one? Oh, yep. Yep.
Okay, thank you for your patience. We'll now move on to the presentations. The first one is proposed preliminary general fund 2022-2023 budget for the Athens Area School District. Ms. Shores.
Sorry. Okay. So after meeting with the board in a learning session, we decided that we wanted a balanced budget this year. So our budget balances. However, the projected deficit before allocating all of the ESSER funds that we had to use was almost 1.6. Sorry. Okay, so our projected deficit before allocating the ESSER funds was almost $1.6 million. If you take into consideration that we have a bunch of non-ESSER funded projects, if you took them out of the equation, then we would be at $436,000 deficit. These are all of the non-ESSER funded projects that the board and Mr. Sage and I discussed. We had bleacher seating, which we're kind of still working through a few things with Hunt and trying to figure out what the final number is. Refurbish the track, redo the whole track, which will be $510,000. Parking lot repairs, we've got our new bids in tonight, which you'll hear in the committee report that they total $368,000. We have 2 district vans that we're looking to purchase, roughly $50,000 each. The locker replacement at the high school, since they were lockers put in the original building, which was what year? Sorry, I don't remember. Yeah, so they're quite old. Skipping down a couple lines, we're gonna paint the lockers at Row. Those are newer lockers, so we're just gonna paint them. We're gonna get a dishwasher for SRU and some water for the softball field. Since the baseball field has it, it's just to keep the fields in better condition and cut down on a little bit of the dust. Just a reminder of what our ESSER allowable uses are. Student achievement, health, improving the air quality, maintaining staffing levels, and academic recovery. These are just, I've updated you on these in the past. It's just a reminder of how much money we have left. We have 4.7 million of our ESSER after this year, this school year. These are all of the ESSER purchases that we decided we wanted to do. We have to finish out the touchless sinks and toilets at SRU and Row. We've started that project in all the buildings. We just want to finish them up. Lynch got a playground this school year. Next school year, we'd like to give SRU a playground. The Row building improvement is to put a few dividers up, move a few things around so that we have some room for some mental health workers. Maintenance has requested floor scrubbers. We're going to contract with NTC for a few mental health workers, which will just a continuation of this year. The learning loss teachers and the summer school achieve and summer rec, all of that stuff that we did last summer will continue in this summer and hopefully next summer. This is just to give you a little bit of history of where our taxes have been. We had no increase last year, and based on our conversation in the learning session, we're probably not going to have a tax increase this year. This is just, again, just a little bit of history that if we were to raise it, how much revenue we would generate from that. If we took it out the max that we could, we would generate almost 700,000. Just a little bit of, just to let you know where our fund balances are. The assigned ones are for specific reasons, like health insurance. So years ago, we set aside some $2 million for health insurance in case the rates went through the roof. PSERS, the same thing. When PSERS was creeping up a few years ago, they took a big jump in the employer contribution. So money has been set aside for that. Capital expenditures, a little bit for IT. Here's where our revenues come from. So we have local revenue, state revenue, and federal revenue. So you can see the bulk of it is state revenue. Right now, I put in what Governor Wolf said that he would give us. I went a little bit conservative and took 3/4 of it. So hopefully we'll get all of our funding from the state, but fingers crossed, that would be great if we did. Federal is just our title funds, and then I have a little piece in there for ESSER. This is, again, just looking at the history of how much. So now the ESSER, it looks like we're going to spend $770,000 less. I just did it penny for penny. What we said we were going to spend in ESSER for the projects, I plugged in and then balanced the budget with that. So that's where that number came. That can be adjusted if there's other projects we want to fund, different things, we can adjust our ESSER. Total salaries and benefits, you can see that that makes up a big portion of our budget. Then I broke it down. So there's two pieces that are the biggest, are salaries and benefits, but then we have all of these other object codes. So you can see different pieces like tech services, purchase property, supplies. The major increases, the purchase property, I put in the lockers there, so that's the bulk of that variance. The other purchase services, I did increase a little bit in transportation, just hoping maybe we do something next year. And I did the track resurface is the bulk of that equipment and property. Our debt service did go down as a result of our refinancing the bond last year. Here's another way to look at it. When you break out, you have instruction. So you have like our teachers that are in the class, regular ed classroom. We have support services, which is our office, the principals, special ed, a lot breaks down the support services. Student activities, athletics is included in that. Facilities would be our custodian, maintenance, and then our debt service. So you can see the bulk of it, we do spend the bulk of our budget on instruction and very little on student activities. Our total expenses, total $45.4 million. It's only up $666,000 from last year. So then this year we're projected, because of ESSER funding that we'll use to cover our benefits, we have a zero balance. So our key takeaways are proposed include no property tax increase, no reduction in programs or staffing. It includes the estimated revenues from revenue and expense from ESSER, and it'll be viewable for public for the next 30 days until we vote on it on June 21st to the final budget. Do we have any questions?
Track resurfacing, have we been putting away?
Yes, we have $240,000 set aside for that. So 240,000, I do believe is, yeah, 240. So we'll only have to cover the remaining, the difference. You're welcome.
Great first budget. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Shores on the budget? All right, next presentation is the comprehensive plan presentation from Mr. Toscano.
Can you hear me? Is this close enough? Okay. So I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a 81-page document that we submit to the state. So I'm going to take you through each page, section by section. So I'm going to give you the abridged version. I shared this with the curriculum committee this evening, talked a little bit about what it looks like and where we're going to go, and then hopefully you guys will approve this for us tonight. Basically, the plan outlines strengths of the district, weaknesses of the district, kind of where we're at. It goes down, it breaks down like every standard academic for elementary, middle, and high school. It's very, very redundant in terms of the information that falls throughout the plan. It's kind of one of the hoops that we have to jump through for the state every 3 years. Our plan happened to be up this year. It's transitioning from Jamie in this role to myself. So essentially what we did is continued a lot of the things that we put in place over the course of the last plan as they continue to be things that we need to work on moving forward. Some of the highlights and things that we added into the plan are for instructional purposes are the RTII periods at the elementary school, and as we transition that into the high school, or not the high school, I'm sorry, the middle school, moving forward this coming school year, and the CST process that we had in place that kind of got a little weird in some of the buildings with transition of principals over the last couple of years, and as we try to bring that back to a consistent basis into the next coming school year. Instructional practice that we talk about, when we talk about those, we're talking about the observation process, which has changed this year. We went from Act 82 to Act 13. Mr. Stage talked a little bit about that in the executive session in terms of the learning of the new process, the fact that it's going to be a little bit more cumbersome for the administrators in the buildings. So we'll walk through that. We have done a good job in terms of rolling that out to our staffs. Along with that observation process is the walkthroughs that we do. That's an important component of how we get a pulse on what's going on in the classrooms on a day-to-day basis. Our administrators have to conduct a minimum amount of those every week. All the administrative team gets those, and we can look at those. So Mr. Stage and I get all of those ourselves, so we know what's going on. I get in once a month with the building principals and do walkthroughs with them. And then hopefully moving back next year to our instructional round process that we started prior to COVID and had to put on hold. And then also our instructional coaching practices that we have in place in all 4 buildings. The other things that we look at are assessment data. So anywhere from Acadience data, STAR data, that's Acadience is reading at the elementary level, STAR is reading and math in our intermediate and middle school. We use Ed Insight benchmarks and then state testing for that. And we also, through the plan, look at some of our safe schools reporting and things that we have put in place here in the district, which would include our PBIS, and most recently our social emotional wellness curriculum, K-8. So boiling everything down, there's 3 basic goals that will continue forward as we go through the next 3 years, and that is looking at our assessments, making sure that what we're doing at Lynch in 1st grade is the same thing we're doing at SRU in 1st grade, making sure what we're doing in one social studies classroom in 6th grade at the middle school is the same thing that we're doing in the other classroom. Now the teaching might vary, but we want to make sure we're assessing kids the same, so we know that, you know, any student that goes through 7th grade math at Harlem Middle School is going to be tested the same, so we know where they're at. That leads into data, which is another thing that we'll continue to look at during our Act 80 days specifically. Data is one of the important things that we use those days for, and the teachers will look at their assessments, look at their benchmarks, and they use that to inform their instruction. And the third piece of that would be the curriculum in itself and continuing to revise that as we move forward. So that's the long and the short of the plan. The comprehensive plan also, I shared this with the curriculum committee, it also includes the special ed plan. However, that's on a different approval cycle. So that was approved in 2020. So even though it's in this plan to get approved tonight, that portion of the plan has already been approved by you previously, because that's on a different reporting cycle than the comprehensive plan. So that's the 81 pages boiled down. Mr. Stage and Mr. Chersnowski will have to sign that if you guys approve that tonight, and then we will submit that to the state. Questions? I was told I had to be brief.
Who wrote the planning process? Or not the planning process, where the heck did it go? Where is it, the first page, like what it describes, it like described the area as being, who did the history?
Oh, like the endless mountains and all that good stuff?
The Tiago, is that the history of the district? Or the-
That was in the plan previously, so I'm gonna guess that that's been copy and pasted from plan to plan for,
That's been in
years?
our comprehensive plan prior to my arrival in
Yeah.
2013. And
Okay.
someone has taken a lot of effort to write the demographics.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
We
that's-
adjust the numbers,
correct.
but we usually leave the history part.
Are we still ranked third in milk production in Pennsylvania?
Listen, I would agree with that.
It sounds right to me.
Just,
We can claim it. Old Forge claims me.
I know you used Harlan Row as an example, but I just want to make sure, like, it'll also be like SRU and Lynch. You'll make sure that like all the third grade teachers are
Correct. That's
doing the same.
actually where it's the most difficult, Kevin.
Yeah.
At the elementary level, and I did mention that too. Like so, first grade. We have taken a lot of time previously and throughout this year as well to get those teachers together. Most recently to work on the our phonics curriculum for K-2. But yes, so the hardest, because of the location. But that would include right up to like the high school biology class. So we've got two teachers teaching biology, or maybe even a third, like with one section. Make sure that they're using similar assessments, so we know that whoever's in Matt Patton's class and whoever is in Miss Mitchell's class is getting the same, depending on who's teaching that, or social studies, or whatever the course may be. Yeah, but the biggest challenge is the elementary schools. Yes, correct. But we started working on that a couple years ago, and we'll continue to do that moving forward.
We may want to look and update the industries. I think some of them have changed titles.
Have they? Okay, I'll look at that. What's that? Okay,
Mills Pride.
Mister.
we can do that.
Just calling you out.
No, I appreciate it.
I'm proofreading. I
Can-
proofread.
Can you email me, Kathy Jo, the specifics?
We've had that in there for so many years. Yeah. We can make
Or we can look at
I
it?
can make
Yeah.
it.
No, that's okay. No, you have to
No,
approve
he-
it,
he
so.
needs to be picked up. No,
If this gets published, it's going to have errors, and I,
Yeah, no, definitely.
no, I'm glad you caught that because I looked at it too and didn't see that.
It doesn't need to be approved technically, I think, until August, but
With the expectation we have to make an edit, yeah, I think we'll be fine. Mr. Barrett? We can make an edit to it, right? There you go. Thank you. Official ruling. It's nice to have a referee here.
right. Any other questions? Or proofs?
Yeah, could you double check our?
I got that straight from a credible source. I can't reveal it though.
thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Toscano.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to committee reports. And the first one up is Finance and Operations.
Is. As you saw from Ms. Shores, part of the budget was a thing on baseball bleachers. We had an engineer's rendering for bleachers at the baseball field. For anyone who's not aware, the dugouts right now preclude, especially the home side of the baseball field, from really viewing the game. So we do have a rendering, but we would like to take and capture some quotes to see a market price as to what it can come in at, and then possibly put it out for bid. So we don't have solid numbers that we're going to vote or put in at this time. The paving project, as with last month, we rejected a bid that was in March, and we reopened the bid May 9th. And we are looking at, for the Valley schools, the total of 270,000. The base was 254,000. And the uptick is to remill and do the length from Row to the backside of Row to, yeah. And then at SRU, we had a base of 293,000, and we went for an alternate bid to mill it and then seal it, and it went down to 84,344. And we also got extra, the bus loop will be sealed. So all in all, there was over $200,000 savings by putting the bids back out. And Chris, that does include the performance bonds. So I learned that tonight as well. So I wanted to make sure that it's a savings of 200,000 for the district. And that's it. That's all I have.
All right, personnel and policy. Oh, do you have questions? Okay. Personnel and policy. Ms. Smart?
Sorry, I was just revving up for personnel and policy. We had a really good discussion this evening. As we decided at the last meeting, we are going to start a systematic review to make sure that all of our policies are updated, and we're going to be doing them in batches throughout the year, as well as any sort of recommended changes and updates required by PSBA or as we need to. So tonight, we did actually review 14 policies. The board procedure policies, which were the first batch of policies that we were going to review as part of our updating to make sure that they are still current. We did review these and have no changes to those, and the dates will be updated on those. Just because of the nature of our updates, those were moved to a second read tonight. So we will be able to vote on those. We did not identify any changes. The second batch of policies that we reviewed tonight were policies 626.1, 626.2, 626.3, and 827, which are around finances and operations. These need to be reviewed and the dates need to be updated in compliance so that we were in compliance with federal programs. There weren't any new updates from PSBA. It was just these were flagged as requiring date updates. So we did review those as well, and those are also automatically moved to second read, so they can be voted on this evening. So there were no changes there. The final lot of policies that were on first read tonight that I want to flag to the board were a number of policies around pupil services. We got through all the policies. There were a couple of suggested changes or updates that we want to make that we just want to flag to the board for your review before our next read. The first one I want to just call out is policy 218 around student discipline. There isn't a PSBA recommendation of a potential to add language around the board approving the inclusion of restorative practices in the code of conduct. And that is something that at this stage, we don't think is relevant for our district. We don't feel that we need to add this language at this stage. Mr. Stage would probably be able to describe restorative practices a little better, but it's basically a process that they could have within the schools where a student, if they committed an offense, and the example that Mr. Cummings described with us was if they performed graffiti on the wall, there could be a decision made that they're going to have to paint the wall to, clean up that mess. It's not a practice that we follow right now in the district. We don't think it's relevant right now. We feel that if at such a point we get to a point that we want to look at this, we could add this language in. I'm just flagging that because it's new. Okay, Mr. Stage.
Yeah, I just want to interject. Restorative practices are usually involved like a student court and allows the student to, have review the behavior or the conduct in front of his peers. They usually involve, rendering justice. The part of it restorative is that it makes the cohort, the grade level, the school community take a part in the behavior management. We do restorative practice when it comes to personal differences. We do ask them to talk it out and things like that. I just didn't think at this time we need to do anything in terms of having a restorative practice plan. However, if we decide at any point in the future to do that, we would direct it to your attention.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. The other policy I just want to flag that we had a lot of discussion on this evening was policy 237, which is around electronic devices. This policy was last updated, I think, in like 2011. And it describes the use of electronic devices such as phones or other types of like computers, things like that, and their use in school. PSBA does have some recommended updates on language, and I'm not going to, you guys can read through it, but really what we're going to recommend is that we do allow the use of electronic devices at the discretion of the school principals, like to basically determine the policies within their buildings, which would be concurrent with practice right now, but this language does need to be updated. There's a lot of different recommendations from PSBA on how you can choose the language. We can share at the next meeting if anyone has what exact changes we would like to make, but I think we felt that allowing this to remain within the control of the building principals and building administration was the correct decision because that would allow them to determine what worked best within their facilities.
Thank you, Mrs. Smart. I think that's important because I think the needs for electronic devices for, I would say, elementary students versus middle and high school students is drastically different.
So, yep, I think that was all of it. So there was a lot covered. We're going to continue each month to move our way through the policies. So there will be probably more that we will discuss as we go forward. But otherwise, it was a very good discussion tonight. So thank you.
Any other questions for policy and personnel?
Well, just to clarify, so on electronic devices, it's labeled as first read, but you're going to revise it, so next time it'll be first read?
Yes, I guess that will be
Yeah.
the case. Yeah, we will adjust the language based on what the suggestions are, and then we can bring that back for the
that one
team.
needs a little
Yes,
more work.
thank you. Yeah, it is a much more complicated one than the others, but good discussion.
Thank you. Next committee report is curriculum, instruction, and technology.
All right, yeah, I'll cover that one this evening. So a few topics were discussed tonight. The first being an update on the new math resources that are being pursued for K through 8. Mr. Toscano shared that there were some meetings with the vendors over the past week and ultimately down selected, or at least came to agreement on the vendor that we believe we want to pursue. Mr. Toscano will be reaching out to various schools throughout Pennsylvania that are using that vendor to collect some input. Ultimately, we'll be looking at probably signing a 5-year deal with this vendor. The goal is to bring that back to the board for approval in June. So in June, we'll be asked to approve the pursuit for that vendor. The next topic we discussed was an update on Daily 5, which Daily 5 is an ELA framework that's used today throughout grades 3 through 5. There will be a professional development session held likely in June that will include teachers for grade through 5, but also will include teachers in grades 6 through 8 as well to look at the potentially expanding that Daily 5 framework into the middle school. Next is the ATSI plan, which is on the agenda later for approval tonight. ATSI is the additional targeted support and intervention. So as I understand it, right, this high school is within this program currently. The current criteria that's keeping us in the program is attendance, right? So we basically have to improve our attendance, and we believe we're on track to be out of that program likely here in the coming months, but we'll be asked to approve that plan this evening. That's later on the agenda. Lastly, there was just an informal discussion around advanced classes in the middle school based on an inquiry that the committee received. Mr. Toscano just provided some background on why we typically don't have advanced classes in the high school, or I'm sorry, in the middle school, and just talked about some potential next steps that we could pursue if there is interest in wanting to look at advanced classes, right? That would be above and beyond Algebra 1, which is offered, in 8th grade, but this would be in other areas such as potentially math or science or social studies. So that's it for this evening.
Extracurricular activities.
I'm not sure when we met, but we did have a meeting, and it was very brief. We went over the winter sports coaches evaluations. All the coaches received good marks from our AD, and we also discussed the breakdown of our athletic director duties between the rec programs and his athletic director duties. Um, and that was it.
Thank you.
To do it, but because it falls under extracurricular, I wanted to raise, went to the high school musical and they performed the Pirates of Penzance, which is a really difficult musical to perform. And the kids did amazing. They did a great job. And I just wanted to commend the whole team, the kids and all the staff who helped on that, because it was a great performance, really fun and a really, really tricky piece of music. So it was really nice to see them outperforming like that, and just a lot of kudos to everyone involved.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to superintendent's items and reports. Mr. Stage?
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. I will keep it brief tonight. When we are notified of the passing of a former employee, we like to recognize them at a board meeting. This morning, Mr. Tom Weber, a longtime employee of the Athens Area School District, he actually retired in 2018. He worked for us for 9 years, passed away this morning. So my deepest condolences on behalf of the district to Mr. Weber's family and his friends. And if we could just take a moment of silence in recognition of his service. Thank you very much, Mrs. Minnick. I think I've used enough time, and I will now cede my time to everyone else.
Okay, thank you. Last intermediate, there's no report. Mr. Owen, NTCC?
Yep, brief update. We actually did not have an April meeting, so that was canceled, but a few updates. On April 21st, the students in the food service program conducted what they called a food truck race, where they created various menus, and they had to have business plans, and had parents and board members, including myself, going through and tasting their food, and hearing their presentations, and ultimately judging their foods as well as their business plans. So it was a great opportunity, to try some good food, and it was just a really good program put on by the food service team there at the Career Center. Secondly, there was the Employers Week that was held a couple weeks ago, I think the first week of May, where over 30 plus area employers attended the Career Center to hire students for summer jobs, as well as potential long-term employment opportunities. So from what I hear, that went very well. Next, the awards day for all students at the Career Center is being held on May 26th at the Towanda High School at both 9:30 in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Athens students will be during that 9:30 time frame. And then lastly, the next meeting is this coming Thursday. That concludes my report.
Mr. Jones, PSPA? Mr. Barrett, Solicitor's Report?
We have several matters to report on. We have quite a few assessment appeals that are working their way through the court. I have, I think, 3 pre-trials next week on several of them that hopefully we can resolve. We have had a few interests from a few people who I've staked out a few petitioners who are interested in just withdrawing their appeals if they could have some relief during the pandemic. There's a couple of them that their request seems quite reasonable, and we're looking to kind of fine tune those numbers. Secondly, we're working on several personnel matters that are also winding their way through some sense of finality. And I wish to point out that the eminent domain resolution that you passed last week will be filed shortly. Matter of fact, I completed it today. The delay was in running down all liens to make sure we have to serve everybody within so many days, and I didn't want to file it too early and run out of time. Lastly, I want to report that I attended the PSBA Solicitors Forum, which was held 3 weeks ago. It was done virtually this year, and it was quite informative. There are a couple little quirks that always pop up in that stuff, and I just got the hard copy today, and I will be giving a report on that later in the future in more detail. Thank you, Madam President. That's all I have at this time.
Okay, visitors' comments on board action items only. Please give name, address, organization which you represent, and subject matter. It is requested that comments be kept to 3 minutes. Comments relative to private student or employee matters should be directed to the superintendent outside of the meeting. Are there any visitor comments? Okay. Next would be the proposed preliminary budget. Proposed preliminary general fund 2022-2023 budget for the Athens Area School District, and to authorize administration to make the budget available for public inspection and announce the board's intention to adopt the 2022-2023 final budget in 30 days. Do I have a motion to bring that?
Mrs.
To the
Cooper will
table.
move.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any questions? Any discussion? All right, Christine, when you're ready, please.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
and Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Okay. Number 9, elect a treasurer for a 1-year term. May I have a motion to bring that to the table?
Correct.
Okay, so Mrs. Smart is currently the treasurer.
I make the motion to appoint, do you want to continue? Natalie Smart as treasurer for another year.
I'll second.
All right. So a motion and a second for Natalie Smart to be treasurer for the next year. Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart.
Do I vote on this or abstain?
Yeah, I think you
Okay,
can.
yes.
I don't know.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
and Mrs. Minnick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next is number 10, appointed district solicitor. We're appointed district solicitor for a term of 1 year. Do I have a motion and a second to bring it to the table?
I'll make a motion to appoint Pat Barrett as our district solicitor for a term of 1 year.
I'll second that.
All right, Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
No.
and Mr. Owen.
Yes.
All right, financial business. Make a motion to bring this to the table. This is the listing of bills, general fund checks, cafeteria bills, earned income tax report, secretary treasurer report, the Harlan Row Middle School activity account. Is there two of those?
For March and April.
Oh, for March and April, thank you. Athens Area High School activity account from March, homestead farmstead resolution, request to pay summer bills for June, July, and August of 2022. Authorize the secretary, treasurer, or president to sign all general fund checks and the treasurer with the superintendent as an alternative to sign all Athens Area School District payroll account checks. And redesignate the Citizens and Northern Bank, Athens, Pennsylvania, as bank depository for the Athens Area School District's general fund account, payroll account, cafeteria account, athletic account, and student activity accounts for the following school years, or following schools: the high school, Harlan Row Middle School, SRU Elementary School, and Lynch Busted Elementary School. Renewal of the secretary and treasurer bonds.
We're voting on all these at once. So moved.
I'll second.
Christine?
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
and Mr. Rude.
Yes.
All right, number 12, personnel items. These are, we're voting for the building and grounds summer employment, student employment, the IT department, summer student intern employment.
Those are pay increases for those.
Oh, these are the, okay, so pay increase memo for the buildings and grounds for summer student employment. The pay increase for IT department, summer student intern, buildings and grounds, summer student employment request, and then the IT summer student intern employment request. Short-term data entry employment request, the request to add an Act 93 elementary assistant principal position, and the request to retain elementary, the 90-90 long-term substitute positions to assist with elevated class enrollments if needed for 2022-2023 school year. And it is also the personnel list, so 12A through 12H. Do I have a motion?
In looking at one of the policies, I believe that on H, because my son is on the summer rec, I think I have to abstain.
Okay,
for-
so we'll pull
He's
H,
H61.
H61, okay.
Yeah,
So we'll just pull the whole H out
okay.
altogether.
So
Anyone
motion
else?
to approve A through G.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, so we are voting to approve personnel items A through G. Christine?
Did we get a first and second?
She did, he and then she did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
and Mrs. Smart.
Yes.
Okay, now I need,
So, yeah, I'll move to bring letter H to the table.
Second.
motion and a second. So Christine, when you're
We
ready.
exclude 60.
Motion was Chris.
And I
Christine.
also, in that motion, can we please exclude H?
I can just
No,
abstain
do
from the
you-
whole thing.
Or you can just abstain from H, is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay. Just leave it.
Okay. Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Abstain.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
and Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Okay, number 13, contracts and agreements. This is the food service management recommendation. Recommend the nutrition group to service the Athens School District food service for the 2022-2023 school year with an option of 4 yearly renewals. the non-bargaining employment contract for July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2027. And the BLAST intergovernmental agreement for shared special services for the school year 2022-2023.
Make the motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mr. Frisbee.
Yes.
Okay, number 14, policies. So, yeah, are we doing all of these or are we doing,
We were going to,
are we pulling out? Or
the first read of,
I think you're good with all of them, but policy.
I would suggest you approve them all as presented, and then if you make changes next month, you can bring them back for another first
There you
read.
go.
Okay, so we will be voting on policy A through N. So that's your board policy procedures, authority and powers, functions, membership, organization, board governance standards, code of conduct, travel reimbursement, allowability of costs through the federal programs and cash management through the federal programs, conflict of interest, student discipline, student expression, dissemination of materials, controlled substances and paraphernalia, and electronic devices. Do I have a motion to bring that up?
I move.
A second?
Second?
Christine, when you're ready.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
and Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Okay, number 15, curriculum and instruction items. We have the revision to the 2021-2022 school year calendar. June 8th will change from an in-service day to an Act 80 day. June 9th will become an in-service day and the last teacher day of the 2021-2022 school year. So that means the students are done on June 8th or June 7th. The last day of school for students is June 7th.
Correct.
The ATSI non-Title I school plan and comprehensive plan presentation that Mr. Toscano presented. I have a motion to bring that to the table.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
and Mrs. Minnick.
Yes. Next are transportation items, additions to the 2021-2022 school year driver list. Do I have a motion to bring that?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
and Mr. Owen.
Yes.
Okay, building and grounds items. So the first thing we have on here is we're going to reject the initial request for proposal of the paving bid results. The second item is to approve the paving bid results. And the third item is the sale of the maintenance plow truck bid results.
Madam President, I would suggest that we vote on all of those individually, please.
Okay? So the first one, 17A. We're going to reject the initial RFP paving bid results. Do I have a motion to bring that up?
So moved.
Second.
Christine? Oh, I guess I should say, is there any discussion?
Just to point out, I believe those bids were from March 30th. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Just
That
to
is
put-
correct.
Just to put a date on it.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
and Mr. Rude.
Yes.
17B, paving bid results.
And that date is May 9th, 2022. If you want to put that in there for,
So these are the bids received for the asphalt paving, crack sealing, and seal coating restripping project.
Mhm.
Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion, questions?
Just to point out that we'll be accepting 2 bids, one for the SRU project and one for the rest of the projects here. Lynch, Rowe, and the high school.
And
Why?
Ms.
That's the recommendation by the Hunt engineers who reviewed the proposals
Okay.
and submitted, we accepted their recommendation.
Could you put those numbers in there with it, where you're accepting the bids in the amount of?
yep.
Yeah,
that's
it's
reflected.
I think the total amount is 368,000.
SRU bid is how much?
So
The SRU bid is 270,000. Oh, no. The SRU bid is 84,344.
84,000.
84,344.
And the contract bid number 1, which would be Lynch, Harlan Rowe, and the high school, comes in at $270,140.
76 cents, yeah.
And the SRU total, you said 84, it's really 97,
Yeah,
right?
it's actually 97.
97.8.
Which includes more work than we anticipated. So we actually, as a bonus, and as Mrs. Cooper illustrated earlier, the second round of bids, we actually get more work done with a cost savings of $200,000.
And this is the second one, right?
So here, you've got here and here.
Sure.
And you have the right numbers.
So Christine, I just want to make sure you have the Valley Schools at 270,140 and 76 cents.
Mhm.
And you have SRU at 97,893 and 15 cents.
93. and 15.
Just so that we have it.
I have it.
Thank you.
I have it in here.
And I think it should reflect that the SRU bid went to Hallbreakers and the Valley bid went to Bishops, yeah.
Okay.
All right, Christine, when you're ready.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart.
Yes.
All right. Sale of maintenance plow truck and bid result, but sale of maintenance plow truck bid results. So they received 2 bids, one from Stropes Wrecking Yard for $1,250 and one from Aaron Anthony for $351. Administration recommends awarding the high bid to Stropes Wrecking Yard. Do I have a motion to bring that to the table?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, questions? Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mr. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
and Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
It'll be okay, Jeff. I know you're going to miss Old Blue. I know you're going to miss it.
How are we going to keep the tipped over building down
Oh,
with
yeah,
that
what are
truck?
we gonna do this whole?
Yeah.
Don't worry.
The salt bag, right?
I
Is
plan
that
on,
pulling it down?
parking my truck there every day. It's inverted. Yeah.
Okay, no other items at this time. Visitor comments, please give name, address, organization, subject matter. It's requested comments be kept to 3 minutes. Comments relative to private student or employee matters should be directed to the superintendent outside of this meeting.
There's a little.
Hi, everybody. Katie Galinsky, Regional Manager with the Nutrition Group, and Travis, Food Service Director on site here at Athens. We wanted to just say thank you so much for approving and for accepting our bid for your food service program for the next year. And so happy we are to be continuing 22-23 school year with you, which will be our 17th year with you. So thank you so much. I wanted to share a little bit just about this year briefly. As you know, we've been offering free meals. The state and federal government, we've been able to offer meals, breakfast and lunch to everybody at no cost and receive those really high reimbursements. So financially, we've been doing very well. But I think something that I wanted to just talk about briefly is how much that has impacted your students. So far this year, from September through April, we've served 197,524 lunches. That's about 1,300 lunches per school day. I just thought that was wonderful. And that's just because of the amazing staff that's here at all 4 kitchens. And we just really appreciate the support from administration and just wanted to say thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other visitor comments? Move on to board communication or informational items. We received information communication from Keystone College dual enrollment agreement for 22-23 school year. Field trip request. I just have a question. When it says funding and it says other, what does that mean? Donations or?
Which field trip are we looking at specifically?
One to Round Top and one to Ellsbury Farm. And
Either-
then there's another one to Harrisburg University.
Right. So they could be grant driven, someone could be paying for it, or otherwise it's just simply a transportation cost that we probably would have under normal transportation.
Okay, thank you. What else is under there? Let's see. There's also the school district enrollment by month for 2021 to 2022. The enrollment for May of 22 and the nutrition group board report for April of 22. Any board discussion items at this time?
Just looking at the list, when it says like, for instance, Lynch grade 5 going on a conservation day, is that just one class or is all the 5th graders going? The whole grade?
Yeah,
All
the
right,
whole grade is
all right.
attending that.
No, I think actually it's the 2 schools actually participating together. So even though it's Lynch going to SRU, I think both schools will be involved in that day. Yeah, it's just being held there. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion items? Our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 21st, here at the administration building at 7 o'clock. No need for an executive session afterwards.
Unless you guys want to.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.